Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I am Anto Budiarjo. This is Monday Live, something that we do every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're here to discuss the advancement in smart buildings, and profiles of the group is on mondaylive.org if you want to know who we are. Also to note that the views expressed here on this show are personal, not of any company or organization. And do post questions and comments on chat. We are trying to make this conversation a lot more interactive, so please chime in. We think that's great. And also this slide deck is available on mondaylive.org. It's actually on the homepage itself. So if you go to the homepage and scroll down, you'll see the slide deck itself with all the links as you click through them. So our theme for the month is delivering smarter buildings, having talked about the stack and various things over the last couple of months. So that's our focus for February. And our agenda would do our normal chit chat, and our focus on delivering smarter buildings is on the two lower layers of the smarter stack, the physical and systems layers. So we'll get into that in a minute and trigger all sorts of interesting discussions, I'm sure. But before we do that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Sinclair. What's going on, Mr. Sinclair?
It's raining women. That's our basic issue for March, is women creating amazing opportunities. That we're going to, as we usually do in our March issue that surrounds Women's Day, is we like to highlight the women in our industry. We like to basically use them as examples to draw more women in, and I think that's where we were talking earlier about just the shortage of folks in the industry. And I think there is a lot of ready and able folks, and especially in a part-time remote atmosphere that can basically lend help to our industry and help us grow. They also have been, a lot of them have been around our industry in varying positions. They know the terminology, which is one of the big pieces of our industry. So it's good, and I think they can quickly get up to speed and do the kinds of jobs you want. So anyway, that's kind of the focus there. We've still got our February issue online, Vegas Wins and Wins. There's linkage there to our YouTubes of the education sessions we did at AHR. We're encouraging the industry to get involved in the evolution of automated buildings. We understand we have to make some changes to move ahead, and we're exploring some stuff right now. Exciting times. Very pleased to have control trends back in the industry. We've been missing them all for the last few years, I guess, or I guess it's been that long, but it seemed that long. Basically since COVID, I guess. So it was great to see Eric pick up some of our stuff and add his flair to it. That was great. In addition to that, we had our contributing editor, Nicholas. He came down with COVID, was unable to go to AHR, but he's put his session up on his website, Beyond Buildings Online, and you can see that there. So he's got some interesting ideas that need to be shared. He's written us an article there, from Modbus to the metaverse. So that's a bit of a leap. So I think that's an interesting article. I think that's about it. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. John.
Hey, yeah. So quick. First of all, some news I think is really important and exciting. Haystack Connect will host another virtual event this year. Historically, it's been an every other year event. And last year in 2021 was its biennial year. And of course, we were forced to go virtual. But what we're seeing is enough momentum, need for education, for people to get together and network. And so the save the date is out there, May 10 through 12. It'll be 3 days of a few hours a day of online presentations by the worldwide community. So the save the date messages are heading out, I believe, this week. So I thought I'd mention that while we're here. And the other thing I noticed is I engaged in some conversations about indirect quality while out at AHR. So indirect quality, tracking it, ensuring you have it, increasingly important to building occupants based on a survey. And so I think that's an important trend, having been in the industry for a while, as we were mentioning earlier. I've seen interest in IAQ come and go, quite frankly. And I think we've shared some of the stories that, people don't want to know, right? Or that, hey, we don't want to see that information because the risk. I think that the real estate industry has to find a way to overcome that, right? And find a way to not put themselves in jeopardy from trying to do the right thing. I don't know the answer to how to do that, but I thought it was important to see this article that surveys show building occupants want to know and they care. That's what I get.
Great, thank you, John. Anno.
Just sort of continuing the theme for 2022 of increased awareness of sustainability and ESG specifically. We're seeing a lot of uptick and trend in end user behavior, interest, wanting to know what to do on ESG. So interesting article from Environmental Analyst. If you haven't seen those guys, they do some really interesting articles in this particular space. They have this thing on this, they call it the 7 sustainability trends and 3 golden threads for 2022. You can see the 7 sustainability trends there. Number 4 is interesting, kind of a change in the ESG sort of rise of the governance and sustainability. And then there's 2 pieces that, if you read the article, that's interesting too. What's causing it? One is regulatory pressure and legal action. So there's some interesting actions going on there. And then the golden thread is the one that jumped out at me was number 2, right? That all ESG is all good, but doesn't work unless you've got some form of data analytics to go with it, because how can you measure success if you're not measuring it, right? And as a result of that, they see a continued rate of acquisition of technology companies in the data analytics space. So interesting article, worth a read.
It's interesting the rise of the mention of data in this regard. So
yes, that's what jumped out at me in the article in the end. That there's a lot of sort of normal preamble that we've seen before. Although again, the regulatory pressure and legal action was interesting to me. And then at the end, for them to recognize that data analytics was a key delivery vehicle for ESG to be successful.
Yeah. Anno, this is interesting. We work with pipeline companies and midstream companies out in your neck of the woods. And one of the things they told us was anything you can do to get our ESG ratings up, that helps us win more business.
Yeah.
Cool. I noticed a couple of things. One is that I saw this piece that was talking about just how housing is getting more expensive. And I know this is residential and we're focused on commercial, but obviously this is sort of reflecting the change in society that we're seeing, and home prices jumping 60% in the past 2 years in Spokane was kind of noteworthy. And mentioning that some of these people are moving from Austin. Last time I checked, I thought people were moving to Austin. So you're muted, I know.
Austin's like two renditions ago. The people have already sold in Austin.
Yeah.
Then they've already sold in, like, what's the next tier? There's one in Arkansas up in the Northwest where Walmart is. They're leaving that. If you've heard the name, it's too late.
Okay.
Well, just to echo that, if you haven't seen Tesla is opening their Austin Gigafactory in first week of April. You know, they're talking about bringing in 50 to 100,000 people into Austin just to run that place. And so a lot of it is now the prices and cost of housing in Austin has just gone nuts, right? So he's already forced out people. So looking for alternative places like Spokane starts to make sense.
Yeah, well, I wonder if my hometown, Trenton, New Jersey, will ever make sense. I wonder if we'll see an uptick.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
And the second thing I noticed was actually relates to the ESG and the stuff that Bill was talking about. This is Shell has converted one of their gas stations. This is in London, actually around the corner where I used to have an office. So this is familiar grounds for me. They've basically converted it into a charging station. Looks cool, but I don't know. I guess that's a trend. I don't know how well that's going to work.
You know, and Anto, that's interesting to see that, because I do a fair amount in the convenience store industry, and as a group, as an industry, they've been sort of against the whole EV thing and charging stations because they make a lot of their revenue selling gas. So to see this converting overtly with the brand attached to it is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the sign of things to come.
Yeah.
Hey, so let me ask you guys a question. Everybody on the call here. I'm getting calls from around the industry, and people are saying we've got to bring our EV stations up to our. I mean, are we adding EV chargers to the whole building automation umbrella?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
Yep.
true. Absolutely.
sooner and quicker than you think.
Yep.
Yes.
If you think about it, it's majorly impactful on the overall energy profile of a building, right?
Oh, huge.
If for nothing more than that alone. So that's an important factor. You can drop the temperature degree in a commercial building, or something goes wrong at your EV station, and guess which one costs more? Right?
Interesting.
Saves more. Yeah.
And if you're, again, depending on the type of property, Class A, it's going to be expected that you do have EV bank of stations there. And again, we're seeing all the retailers start adding stations now, the Walmarts, the Targets of the world, and so forth and so on. And actually, you'll hear something from us through one of our clients just completed a whole new EV solution. It's pretty cool, that also saves energy as well. Not only provide energy, but the way they've written the stations and everything, it saves energy. So it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you think about that too, Bill, that's the only way that EVs can really be successful with today's technology, because going to a destination to charge your vehicle, is a 20 to 40 minute endeavor, right? It'd be way easier if you could go to work and plug it in while you're working and have it done that way. So
Yeah, for sure. And Anto said you're not sure about this image down here. I mean, is anybody on this webinar going to buy a gas-powered car moving forward?
No, I was not sure about just the concept of gas stations being turned into charging stations, because the space being consumed is probably different and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious as to how many gas stations will actually be turned into effective EV stations. Because EV, you go to a gas station for a few minutes, and you go to an EV station for at least 30 minutes. Yeah.
20 to 40 minutes. I think until where you're going to see that are stations that are along primary routes, right? Main freeways and things like that, destination type.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to do it in town, because
This is in town.
you can have one at your house for $500, right? So,
but this is in town, right in the middle of London, just around the corner from Chelsea football. Anyway, let's move on.
Urban is a whole other thing that makes some more sense. Yeah.
Okay. So couple of things to talk about. This is happening next on Thursday, and Brad just actually posted the link to it on chat. So thank you. This is nice, nice teamwork here. So this is a webinar that we Monday Live are doing with the Coalition and the Building Intelligent Group, BIG, on this Thursday. The time on here is not right, actually. There's something wrong with the timing thing, but it is.
I got 4:30
your time, yeah, which is actually 5:30 ET. So this graphic is wrong, but everything else is right. So anyway, go to that link that Brad shared, and then you can register for this and join us on Thursday. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, another save the date. There's a lot of save the dates here this week. Is that we've been talking, for the past few months about the Division 2525 work, and we've been soliciting contributors over the course of AHR, and over the past few weeks, we've actually had quite a number of people interested to be part of the creation of this. And so what we've decided to do is to start to hold weekly check-in calls on Tuesdays at noon ET, starting not tomorrow, but tomorrow week, so it'll be March the 1st. And the purpose of this is actually to welcome contributors and to figure out how we're going to manage and organize this work that needs to happen here. I'll be posting on the Monday Live group on LinkedIn more details about this, but please do join us next Tuesday, March 1st, if you have indicated your interest in Division 2525 stuff. So any other comments before we move on? No? All right, so we are talking today about physical and systems. These are the two lowest layers on the Smarter Stack. And I'm actually going to stop this share, and we'll have a little chit chat, but I'm also going to bring up another slide deck just to put on, just to capture some notes of our conversation. And the question that's really being asked, last week we had a really interesting conversation. We were asking who we're talking about in terms of purpose and operation. I think here in the systems and physical, the most important questions is, what are we talking about here? What systems are we talking about? And what physical things are we sort of talking about? And how do they differ? How do they differ between the two? And the description that's actually on the Smarter Stack sort of gives a hint of what it's all about. The physical is what is actually being made smarter. So the implication there is that physical things are inherently not able to make itself smarter. So it's the physical stuff that is being made smarter by the smart, and the systems is that the systems that actually keeping the building operational 24/7, right? So it's the systems that's actually making the physical stuff work. So that's kind of the starting point, and obviously we have the full stack above that. So I'm going to stop sharing and let the group start opining on physical and systems. Let's start with physical maybe first. Thoughts from the group?
Well, if nobody starts, I'll start. I mean, I know everyone's going to jump in and talk about the building automation systems, but I wanted to have also discussion about on the physical side. We're talking about equipment, right? In your mind, is that correct? Like chillers, fans, pumps.
Okay, so this is our worksheet here.
There you go.
So what are we talking about? Well, there is obviously the concrete and steel, meaning the actual structure of the building. That's, to me, that's where we start. And then the equipment, and then I think it's open there. That's, I think, for us to discuss here.
Yeah, so I'd add the the equipment systems, and then the embedded controls that they have that make them do what they need to, but don't necessarily add any systems level intelligence unless they're connected or connected to some other software that provides that type of coordination and can analyze data across it. So I would call it the embedded control systems as one of them, or equipment embedded, equipment hyphen embedded. I think that's a part of what we're talking about at the systems level. Sorry, you're pointing to physical right now. So.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine a piece of equipment with a motor and fans and whatever, and there's a controller in it, would it be fair to say that the equipment itself, the box and the metal and the screws and everything else, is physical and the controller is the system? Is that one way of?
Well, I think you were going to run into what Anna was bringing up, right? I have this device and it has a basic controller so that it can turn off and on and maybe even run a schedule, but I'm connecting it to a building automation system to do more things with it, right? So I think that line is being blurred on physical. And you can't say it is just the iron and screws and nuts and bolts, because virtually everything comes with some basic control on it. So I think we have to decide that that's what we mean and separate the true systems that aren't part of the equipment but attached to them, the BAS or the industrial automation system. It's not part of the chiller. It connects to it to supervise it, do other things with it, manage set points, coordinate, control with other elements in the plant, etc.
I think there's an element of, sorry, Tracy.
No, I was gonna say, given what you guys are saying, it might make sense to draw the line much more black and white when it comes to physical versus system, so that a mechanical system, whether connected or not connected, would be definitely on the system side, because it is a system that's sitting on a physical building as opposed to cement, steel. And the thing that comes to mind that will blur this a little bit further, what about things like smart windows? Right? That's really physical, but clearly something that's going to be or have controls in a system associated with it. So, or shape.
It's into the blurred line, right? That's just
blurred line
that makes it tough. I would say that, even concrete, there are sensors now to embed in the concrete to actually report on their, performance or degradation. So,
strain gauges. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. So you're taking it really, it's really a blurry line.
Yeah.
There's also a vintage level to this discussion, right? I mean, there's earlier generation pumps and motors that had no controls electronics per se, and they were added afterwards after the pump was installed. But to your point, John, lots of current technology machines come with some sort of controls technology already built on, speed controllers, whatever. So there is also a line of age of the equipment that we have to deal with.
Given that we're talking about creating smarter buildings, is there, I'm just putting it out there, is there something that could be said or done around, is it connected or not connected? Whatever this physical asset might be, whether it be smart concrete or windows or whatever, as soon as it's connected to something, does that then make it a system level thing? Because it's heading up the stack immediately at that point, right?
I like that.
It starts on the smarter path.
Is it a question of being connected, or is it a question of it being self-sufficient?
I think just connected. Let's go to the concrete, the sensors. It's not self-sufficient, but they'll report on degradation of the concrete.
Right.
That's a system, right?
It's reporting up to operations and purpose at that point. To John's
point. It doesn't do anything about its operation. The concrete's there, right?
I think there will be self-contained. I was thinking the same thing, Anto. I think there will be self-contained physical assets that never necessarily get connected, but for purposes of a smarter stack, we are talking about things that are connected, or else you don't work your way up the stack, right? There are no apps. There is no exchange. It's not the same, really. So one could argue that there's an ecosystem around even something that is self-sustained at a low level, but that's not what we're talking about.
So not connected. That's basically not connected to.
I would say a a basic attribute of something we would consider in the physical layer would be something that's not associated with the building, but not connected.
I like that because it leaves room for people who are doing IoT solutions, right? Because you can connect non-connected stuff easily with IoT approaches.
Yeah.
And that makes it connected, sorry.
Yeah.
IoT inherently is connected.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That's why IoT
Connecting
is
it to
being
something.
successful, because they're connecting to things that are not connected today.
So
Yeah.
IoT systems themselves are on the systems level, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
So can I offer a comment that might change that? Things that are not natively connectable.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, I like that.
It doesn't have the inherent ability, so I'd have to add an IoT device to it. Or if it did, then I can connect to it, right? So not
Right.
natively connectable.
And that's one of the major trends of our sort of controls generation here is the amount of disparate things out there that are now being connected that you might never have guessed would be part of a smarter stack, for instance, right?
Right.
Like embedded strain sensors and iron and cement and so forth.
So sensors, just thinking of the sensors and the concrete sensors. So sensors in concrete
They're
are,
put there to be connected. They have to be, unless they're, actually, they could be a visual, just a local visual. An inspector walks by once a month and looks at them.
so that's a physical that remains in the physical. And when you connect it to some other stuff, some other system.
That's no different to like water meters or gas meters, right? That you can read without having, that are not connected today or haven't been connected. You can go past and read the data physically.
Okay.
That's a good example, actually.
And when we say connectable, we mean digitally connectable, obviously. I mean, it's kind of
yeah,
stating.
But Anno, your example though is a good one, but for example, and I'm sure everybody's homes here, the gas guy comes in a truck, doesn't get out, just drives around and it gets whatever my meter says. That's connected to something. He's connected to it.
That's why
right?
I put digitally connected.
So,
well, there are a lot of meters in the world for sure, and even in the US that people go and read those damn things still, right? I grew up in rural America, and there are no trucks driving around. There are no smart meters back, up in the woods of Maine, for instance.
no, and you'll always have those, Tracy.
Yeah,
I mean,
So those would be physical.
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So
I would
then
say these days, a meter is inherently or likely to be connected, right? So that's a good, back to Anno, it's a good example of a crossover sort of an asset.
Which is, I think, that if we're talking about the stack using the stack as how to make a building smarter, I mean, that's the lowest level you got to deal with, right? So the lowest level is, if you've got nothing connected in your building, that's where you have to start, which again, I think is where the power of the stack comes in, because there are far too many people who'll come in and go, I've seen these great dashboards, and you go, great, you go look at their building, and you go, but you've got nothing to physically connect to. You have to start there. So let's address that question. What's important to you?
So if we take that statement and just flip it and say things that are physical are those inherently not connectable.
Which is what we have.
Yeah, and I think David's bringing up an interesting point, because I've seen this. Don't assume the connectability doesn't have to be. We don't have to assume what type of technology is used to do that, because I've seen what David's talking about. Cypress, right, has a great optical reader that you can clamp onto meters now. You don't have to put water motion sensors or gas sensors or moving devices. So there are lots of ways of doing it. We don't need to presume how to do it. There's a lot of clever ways to do it these days.
But again, digitally, we're talking about digitally, because when a human looks at it, it is connected through the human, but it's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll give you another kind of gray area example in restaurants and quick serve restaurants. Still to this day, the normal mode of operation for taking temperatures in HACCP controlled areas is somebody walking around, sticking a thermometer in the unit, waiting until it comes to temperature, and then writing it on a clipboard. That is the normal mode of most quick serve restaurants, like for reach-ins or there's
So-
permanently, mounted
So those
thermostats.
pieces of equipment are physical because they are not connectable.
Well, but then how easy is it to stick a digital temp sensor in there and connect it to a temp monitoring system?
Well, that makes it,
So the unit itself would be physical.
yeah.
Whatever then gets applied to it would make it a system or be part of the system layer.
I
No
think
matter
maybe
how
the
basic.
challenge you're having, Anto, is you got the word connectable there. It's probably just connected, right? I mean, everything, to Tracy's point, everything is connected these days. Can be connected these days with some sort of technology. It's whether it is or not. And if you want to start it on the smart stack, then yeah, you need to start connecting things at the lowest level. Which, by the way, my earlier point, that's a significant statement, because that really then causes you to sit down with the guy to say, well, what do you want connected? Because we can connect anything these days, right? So the question is, what do you want connected?
There's
Do
a
you
weather
have a-
station at the top of one of my favorite ski areas that's connected. And it's connected because there's a video camera pointing at a thermometer, a dial thermometer, and putting it up on the screen so I can read the temperature. Right?
I mean, that's why I suggested
Analog.
natively connectable,
Yeah.
right? I know we can connect anything, but if it doesn't have anything in it, it's just physical.
Yep.
Right?
Yep,
So
I
that's
like
why
that.
I, had suggested natively and digitally was added connectable, because basically things could be connectable but not connected. So does that make them a system? Because I can go add an IoT sensor to it. I think there's a distinction there.
Well, I'll push John on you, because there's so many things that are connectable natively that aren't connected.
Right. But we still, if it is at that level, then it means it's not just pure physical. It has the ability to be connected
Right, so it's potentiality.
natively, not by going to the store and buying something and adding it to it.
Aha, okay.
That's the point I was trying to get, as a distinction between what's just purely physical.
Yeah.
I've got a fan and it's an old fan. Yeah, I can go buy a sensor to determine if there's proof of flow, or I can have a fan that has that built in. Now, whether I connect to it, that's a separate story.
So in that scenario, the second fan that is natively connectable,
Yeah.
you would describe as physical, as system,
Mhm.
because of course, yes, because of the not. So if it's not natively connected, then it's system. If it is natively connected, if it's not natively connected, it's physical. If it is connectable, it's system.
I'm saying connectable, because I put that fan in and it hasn't been connected yet, right? So I mean, it's one way to look at the distinction. Other than that, I don't know how you make a distinction. Everything can have an IoT sensor added to it.
Yeah, you could plug a desk fan into a smart outlet.
Yeah.
I don't hate John's distinction.
And to support what you're saying, John, is basically I got the fan or whatever piece of equipment, and it's connected enabled already. And it's my choice whether or not I want to make that part of a system to connect it at all.
Mhm.
So
So maybe you say connection enabled instead of
Yes.
connectable. Connection enabled, maybe that's a better word, more
There you
descriptive.
go. I prefer that.
Yeah.
connection enabled.
Yeah.
So to the opposite to that, in the system, we're saying that here we're talking about things that are
Connected.
things that are connected.
Digitally connected. I don't know. I think
I think that's vague.
Thing digitally is implied. when it's-
we can refine that.
What's vague about it, Bill? What do you want to clarify?
Because to John's point, anybody can get, anything can get connected.
But once they are connected, they are by definition part of a system though.
Okay, so then,
Right.
then it's anything with potentiality or that are connected. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
We're kind of saying two different sides, but okay.
I'll go back to my home lighting example. If you have nothing but regular lamps throughout your home, but then you go through and plug them all into a smart plug. And now, would you call that a smart home at that point? You can schedule all your lights, turn them on remotely.
Yes, it's a good analogy.
Because you basically have both. You have the physical and the system. The light is the physical because it was not able to be connected, and the smart the plug that you bought makes it connectable.
Right.
Makes it
So
connected.
the plug is enabling the connectivity part of the whole thing.
Correct.
Goes back
The
to that
lamp is still the
enable.
lamp. The light is still the lamp.
Right.
It knows nothing different.
Right.
So this is an area that's worth a few seconds discussion on too. Is one of the things that we find is that, especially dealing with end users, their confusion, or not confusion, their need or desire to have someone tell them how to do that, right? What is the right approach? I'll give you a good example. We're dealing with one customer at the moment who's looking at water meters, smart water meters. And so they're thinking, do I throw out all my existing water meters and put new generation water meters that got connectability? Do I do the Cypress approach and put an optical reader on top of it? But my point is, they're looking for advice and consultants in this space as to what's the right answer. And then they want to connect it to IoT. I guess my question is, where does that? Who does that? Is that something that a systems person does, or does that live down on the physical level? Or who do you guys think should be doing that sort of consulting?
I would say that's a system architect, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to make trade-off decisions between the best approach to bring it online effectively. And I'll give you a good example, lights, right? You can buy lights that are natively Wi-Fi these days versus a desk lamp that you just plug in the wall and manually turn it on, right? Another good example would be, it's pretty easy these days to find doors and buy doors, commercial doors that are electronically controlled through, an access control system. Or you can do what I did over the weekend and add a little attachment right onto my existing deadbolt that communicates Wi-Fi and turned it into a smart door, right? So
Take a look at these two comments
From
Michael and from Steve here. It seems to me, from Michael, it seems to me that the differentiation that you are trying to make is physical versus logical rather than physical versus system. Systems can exist in the pure physical world. Rising a layer above the physical requires that ability to perform a logical abstraction on something in the physical domain. And Steve's point here, maybe for consistency, the mechanical components should always be physical. The things that are added to make them connected should be considered the system. Sensors, et cetera, gather status from the physical and share that data through connections. These things added may be under the skin or external. Both very good comments here. Very, very good.
and I think that nails the intention here of the distinction that we're trying to create.
And can a mechanical thing, a reference component, as Steve refers to, can that become connected, and thus, as it is connected, it becomes smarter? That to me, yes.
Yes. So the logic, physical versus logical, should we?
Like it.
I like,
Yeah.
so a system, so basically it's a logical thing, is that?
Well, I think his point is there's a logical abstraction of the thing, right? The way I define a pump, so the pump is a physical pump. There's two sets of data that I get from that pump, right? One is the sensor data as it relates to, you know, its flow rate, its horsepower, you know, its inrush current and stuff. And then the other one is all the metadata for it, you know, what's it connected to, where is it, who made it, what's the manufacturer, you know, warranty data, et cetera, et cetera.
Look at Brad's point here. Systems could change to connected systems. Connected systems equal the physical as well, and plus, sorry, the connectivity. So the key word is, instead of the systems layer, is it a connected systems layer? If we use our model here.
That's a good point, actually, Mark.
It is. I think so too. Yeah.
Earlier, I mean, when you think about something like a split unit, you know, AC unit, it's a system all in its own right? I mean, it's a standalone little HVAC system. It's got its own sensors, controllers, feedback loops, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's not connected to anything else, but it's a system in its own right.
And
I think
that's why it doesn't necessarily make it a connected system.
Right.
Right. But we would call that a system.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. So
That
I think
breaks our definition of.
Yeah, I think it's not as easy as connected or not connected.Maybe it's, I mean, really what we're talking about is the ability to gather data or gain control of an asset, a physical thing, right?
Well,
that's what defines a system. Sorry, that I'm saying that's the line for system, right?
Still the logical abstraction, right? At the end of the day, you're going to try and model that system, that device. You're going to create some sort of model for it.
Are we trying to make this more complicated than it actually is?
Yeah, we are. We did that successfully.
We are. And again, I'm not saying I personally, I think between Brad, Steve, and Michael here, there's some really good nuggets out of here that can help us bring this whole thing down to make it simple. I mean, you know, connected systems. Do we all believe that in order for a building to be smarter, you must have connected systems?
You must have connectivity.
Yeah.
I'm going to draw the line, the difference between connected and connectivity.
Okay. All right.
You must have connectivity, but connectivity
contained.
Right, but you must have connectivity, and connectivity connects those systems or those physical.
Well, let me just because this is about the journey, not the destination, just for sake of debate here, would we consider a building that was made up of a series of standalone HVAC, lighting, access control, and not connected to the internet, but it had all those smart systems that just weren't necessarily communicating with one another, but they were state-of-the-art technical systems? Is that a connected, smarter building?
Well, just before you answer that, just to twist it a little bit, in my world, I don't know that they need to be connected to each other per se. Back to John's point about, do I need my thermostat connected to the human resource system? Do they have connectivity so that any other thing can go to it? So connected to each other, sure, but the connected is just because it is a pathway. Right.
Well, and if people have done work on like Army Corps buildings or secure buildings, air gap is the name of the game for a long time. Right. So,
that's a good point. Prisons.
But we'd still consider those to be smarter buildings.
Yeah.
Because they are.
Doesn't have to be out. Hey, I want to follow up on Mark's comment. Are we making it too complicated? Maybe when we came to this slide, we were victimized by the 2-bullet problem. Are you guys familiar with the 2-bullet problem? If you only have 2 bullets on a slide, it means you're not done with it.
So let me throw this in.
3.
Yeah, let's.
No, we only had 2 when we went down this rat hole.
Yes.
Let's look at this to be more complicated. So we're talking about connectivity, and how you make the connectivity or where you make the connectivity. But then do we believe that a smarter building needs to be, you've got to have the interoperability amongst all the equipment, the systems, the data, so forth and so on, because interoperability.
Yeah, but that's my problem. That's my problem though, Mark. I don't know that interoperability is a thing anymore, to be honest. I'm going down a different path, but I don't know interoperability. I'm on John's wagon of my thermostat doesn't need to talk to my human resource system.
Oh, I agree with that, but your thermostat needs to talk to your HVAC system.
Oh, no, so now you're being selective.
I know, and it needs to talk to possibly your occupancy.
That's my point of a building full of really smart systems that aren't connected to one another or any other buildings.
Right.
It might have the latest, greatest technology in terms of, thermal control. Does that make it not a smart building? So it's the
path. It's what you said, but it's what you said though, Tracy, earlier. It's a journey, right? I mean, that could definitely be smart. A smarter version would be when they are interconnected.
Yeah, unless you're with the U.S. Army Corps, in which case putting it on the internet would be really stupid, right? So.
Yeah, I remember projects we did with prisons. They were of the same mind, apparently.
Yeah. But I mean, we're exploring this so we can all agree on a definition. We are making it complicated on purpose, I think.
I like Skip's comment. Sometimes you got to wade into the weeds to find the golf ball to bring it back onto the course. Make it simple.
That's right.
Yeah. Just to make a complicated situation a little more complicated, what about the fact that these physical systems are being specified by all of the other divisions in the Construction Specification Institute spec? And fundamentally, the value propositions we're talking about delivering are really being potentially specified. If you're talking about a smart structure with strain gauges or a bridge with wireless pre-stressed concrete beams that have wireless sensors in them, we as the integration or control systems piece have something to say about that, but the structural engineers or people that are providing that value proposition to itself have a lot more to say about it. So where is the linkage between the physical that is comprised of the other layers of the CSI and what we're doing here?
And just to extend, Jim, that's kind of lies down the IoT. That's at construction time. Now in operations time, we've got IoT guys who are putting in all systems independently of anything else as well, right?
Right. So how do we link those physical to the physical that we don't control to the integration pieces and the value propositions we care about?
So I wonder if one of the challenges that we have as a result is we have no champion in that space, right? There's the structural guy who's the champion for the structural. There's the mechanical, the electrical guy. We have no representation at that level.
Actually, and no one else does either, which is why the system is completely screwed up. I mean, one could ask, where is the logical methodology for bubbling these value propositions up into the smarter building, right? Where is the coordination that is going to actually get those value propositions out and for us to use, liberate it?
I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Yeah.
I think a lot of those problems exist because people were trying to simplify things, right? It's much easier for a lighting contractor to bid a job if they're just concerned with their lighting piece of it and not worried about how it's going to operate with the HVAC system, and vice versa for HVAC.
So Steve Jones has sort of suggested another way of looking at it, which is basically, I think it's along the lines of what we've been talking about. The only system that we really care about are the systems that can connect and play with other systems and everything above that.
This is called the smarter stack, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we can go down to one bullet. Things that are not natively digitally connection enabled is the only bullet we need on physical.
Yeah.
So now our slide looks like nobody did any work on it at all.
I have a comment on the needs part of that, though, which is, I think part of what we're promoting here or saying, maybe assuming, is there's an inherent need to future-proof here a little bit. When you're starting at this layer, what we're proposing, what we're saying is you need to be thinking about the rest of the stack so that you can inherently make your physical assets more future-proof, expandable, connectable, whatever it might be. So I don't know that I'm wording it exactly correctly, but I think you guys kind of understand what I'm trying to say.
I agree with you, Tracy, but that's what was my earlier point. Who's our champion in this group? Not this group, but in the construction group that's going to make those requirements. I know we're working on the specs, but
I'm starting to hear, Anna, that these big construction companies are starting to contemplate this and bring people in-house.
okay.
For instance, I got a call from somebody who said, we're gonna start offering building automation for the life of the building. All part of the initial contract or something like that.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Vegas thing, right?
Yeah.
So to go back to the needs, physical is things that are not natively connection enabled. So does it need for a physical thing that are not does it need to be connected? Is to be connecting it to something? Is that a need?
Yeah, if you need to move it up the smarter stack, yeah. Otherwise, it's just dumb.
Connect it. That's almost like one bullet.
Yeah.
One bullet, that makes 2 bullets.
Yeah, but you got to get rid of your blank bullets as well if you want to make it.
Yeah, okay. So
I want to
otherwise
comment
you-
on that, Bill's comment about the construction, right? They may be proposing that, but they're still going to subcontract that to a system integrator most likely, right? All they're doing is setting up an insurance plan. If I build your building, it'll all be taken care of. But that doesn't mean if I build your building, I'm doing every bit of that. I mean, we see this throughout the industry, which is part of the problem, is the system integrators who have these special skills are often not visible to anybody, and they're hidden under layers and layers of procurement.
Well, and future proofing can be, I mean, a non-systems, non-smarter stack example would be somebody who puts in or leaves extra openings in the breaker box for future expansion to the electrical system, or stubs out plumbing for a possible extra addition somewhere. So future proofing is not a new concept here, but we want people to think of that in terms of creating a smarter building. Maybe your budget doesn't have the ability to add all the layers going up the stack right now, but someday it might, or a new tenant might come along where that's an important thing and they want a smarter building, even though today the people that are in there don't care. So that's kind of the what I'm trying to get is there something here there is a need or a business case to put some of this into the physical layer that will create future value.
It sounds like a lot of what this is always is an education process. And do we somehow, in the whole intent of the building and the smarter building, get up into that, the very first page, which is the intent of what the building is? And do we need to get our message there and say that part of the intent of the building is that it becomes a connected, smarter building? And these are some of the items that we feel necessary, or point them to various positions on the stack. Like we really, in the whole command of things, we have to move right up to that first architectural, the intent of the design that the owner and the architect are actually doing. We have to basically create our profile to the point that we're way more important than we are now. We're brought in as, we're always brought in as control contractors at the end, control all this crap. And now what's happening is the control is becoming such a big part of it. It has to be part of the building intent. So we have to move all the way up the stack would be my thought on that.
You mean the reasons, right? The purpose has to be moved up.
Yeah, that's all of, that's the purpose of the stack, is to show how it trickles up to the top. The top is where you have the purpose.
But is the stack going to be presented at the same time to the owner on the intent of the building? You know what I mean? That first meeting, when they're deciding how many stories the building's going to be, all of that information.
I think that's a different thread, surely,
Well,
than
but I get
talking
what
about the
Ken-
system and physical.
what Ken is saying is kind of in line with what I was trying to get out there, which is if Smarter Stack is about educating owners and developers and whoever, part of that process, the very genesis or beginning seed of that should be when they're deciding on the physical stuff. You know, today, nobody would build a building that didn't accommodate an IT infrastructure somehow, some way. There's a riser room that has a pipe coming in, if nothing else, right? So it's those same kind of little decisions that happen way back at the beginning, like Ken was saying, that make that building become part of this Smarter Stack, or enable it to become part of this.
Right, and it comes down to these two things. So when you have things that are not native, that can't natively connect, what you need to do to them is to connect it.
Or
Period.
I would say not connected necessarily, but it's connection enabled. You need to do the opposite of what if it's not natively connected enabled. What you really need to do is connection enable it. Right?
To make it be able to be connected.
Right. Even if it's not done today,
right.
We would still rather that people laying concrete and building buildings have all the hooks in there to make it easier to integrate all the systems later on, right?
This reminds me of The Sandlot. You guys ever see the movie The Sandlot? You're killing me, Small.
Killing me, Small.
Killing me. Yeah.
Okay, so then the things that are in the systems layer are things that are digitally connected. Duh.
Yeah, it has to be.
Now there's systems.
Yeah. I would say that there's an attribute to that includes, you know, measuring, sensing, and or controlling.
Right, which is, but that's function specific. That's equipment specific.
It's kind of implied for sure. Yeah, it's implied that when it's connected, that's what's going on. But
why does it have to be? Okay, so digitally connected. Okay, digitally is what I'm caught on here, but I'll back off.
As opposed to analogically connected?
Yeah. I mean, think about what like Steve Jones is doing with all the buildings that are the old N2 systems. They're going to get smarter. But I guess eventually they will be digitally connected once they're going over the internet. So yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah,
so
well,
really,
that's what we were saying earlier, right? There's the actual function of doing the digital connection is a whole industry and opportunity in its own right, whether it's like Steve is doing with his N2 thing, whether it's like Cypress is doing with their optical readers, whether it's like IoT guys sticking on new sensors. How you solve that is, and the point I was trying to make way back when was, what's missing in this piece in the physicals is who's the consultants that the building owners go to for that advice, and we see there's a gap there, right? And we get people coming to us and go, I'm trying to connect my water meters. What's the best way to do that? Right. And there's 1,000 ways. And so you're trying to advise them. And there seems to be a gap in that space as to, okay, there needs to be connected. The options are huge.
Herein lies the opportunity. Oh, sorry, Roger, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the MSI is beginning to act like a consultant for the REITs and the other guys, because they're actually there trying to make sure what gets installed is what they were asking for, because the contractors and the consultants actually either don't understand it or are changing it as they go along to actually try and get the job done. And they're acting on the customer's behalf now.
There really should be a role that's on par with an architect called a systems architect, right? Yes. That really, it's as important to make all the decisions and design the building in such a way that it can accommodate everything that it will need forever, right? And that should be on the same level as a architect who designs where the walls go.
Yeah.
That's,
And
So
part of my
we're-
challenge, sorry,
we're
just
past-
quickly.
we're- Go ahead.
I know. Just last one for Roger. Part of my challenge with the MSIs, and I agree with you, I think they're stepping into the role, Roger.
Yeah.
My concern with them is that I don't know they've got a broad enough experience of the technologies out there to know what the right answer is. They tend to push what's always been done before.
I think
Right.
some of them are really progressing on. I mean,
Okay.
we've seen it here, certainly in London, that where they're up. They're kind of born out of the controls industry, but they've actually moved up way into providing the customer with all these connectivity to all these applications that are needed, that are feeding off the data. So they're kind of grown up, and they did that in the 70s, right, from panels and electricians all the way through to where they are now, and it's just a progressive thing going up there. It's quite interesting. I talked to one who said, we're so busy now, we've got enough backlog for the next 18 months to 2 years. We're going to actually make the tools available to other smarter SIs to help bring them along.
I've always had an issue. I agree completely with you, Roger, by the way, but I have an issue with the term MSI. To me, that there's an implication there that you're, and I know this isn't how it's applied every day, but there's an implication that you're integrating things that already exist, that you're integrating as opposed to architecting, right? There's a distinction between a builder and an architect. There should be an equal distinction between a systems architect and an integrator.
So
Hence
we
my
need
point,
to,
there needs to be a champion.
we
Yeah.
need to bring this to a close. This has been great. So really it comes down to whether they're digitally connected between systems and physical, which is kind of simple, but that's a lot of great things are simple. So anyway, this has been great. Thank you all. Thanks for everybody in the audience to be part of this. We'll put this on YouTube by tomorrow, and otherwise have a great week, and we'll see you potentially on Thursday on the big webinar, and then we'll see you again next Monday on Monday Live, where we'll sort of wrap up this delivery month, probably talking about the middle part of the stack. So with that, wonderful. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Bye now.